Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. What's up, Seekers and Shifters? In today's episode, we're talking to my friend Brody Lee, who is a recent transplant from Australia. And why I love talking to Brody is because he is a big idea guy. And he always gets me thinking bigger. He's so inspirational. When I'm thinking here, he's thinking all the way out here. And so we had a whole conversation about that, and it got really deep and really weird. We talk about some Buddhist philosophy and some quantum mechanics and all kinds of fun woo-woo shit. So I think you're really going to love this episode. So please enjoy my conversation with Brody Lee. Brody, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Brody Lee. I am from Australia, but currently in the wonderful New York City. I just moved recently. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Beyond Impact and the creator of $1 Million Events. That brand is eventsconsulting.co, and we help entrepreneurs scale up their impact with events. But what I'm very interested in, and I'm sure we'll get that into that today, is philanthropy. And I use the money that I make as muscle to invest in worthy causes. Things like food. 900 million people experience food insecurity every single day. 4 billion people don't have adequate sanitation, and 2 billion don't have clean drinking water. 50 million kids are trafficked for sex every year. And we all know about climate change. But one fun fact, seeing as though we're going into the woo and more spiritual space, is that when I was 10 years old, I ordained as a Buddhist monk in Burma, now known as Myanmar. And I was raised Buddhist, and we got to go on a religious pilgrimage. And it very much has shaped my values through life. I'm not practicing Buddhist, but it's the general kind of things that go into the religion I very much align with. So, yeah. Oh, and I'm a big space nerd. I'm a big space nerd as well.
We know that. And you could talk as much or as little about that as you want. I had no idea you were raised Buddhist. And that's why I love doing this show, because you and I have been friends for a while. We've hung out, this never came up before in our conversation.
No, it didn't. It's also something that I haven't talked about a lot, and I don't know why, but I'm coming back around to it a bit more lately. And I've actually got a book down here called "What the Buddha Taught" by Walpola Rahula. I've read it before, but bringing it back in, and I've actually started digging into the old Buddhist text, the Pali Canon, which is like the earliest records of everything that he taught. So it's been very interesting.
I love that. And I love the philanthropy too. My first big coaching business was Impact Scaling School. And it was really around it was around this concept of I want to make good millionaires, right? Like, so people who want to give back, who want to do things for society. A lot of it was folks with progressive values working for progressive social change. How can we help them make money so that they can have a bigger impact? And you and I have always been really aligned on that. You've gone so far as to take percentages of your revenue and donate them to various causes and really document that in all of your marketing online. I love that you're doing that. What are some of your favorite causes to support?
We partner with a company called B1G1, Buy One, Give One. The whole premise with them is, what if every time we do business, something good happens? And so they have over 500 worthy causes that you can donate to. And one of the cool things I like about the platform is that 100% of the money that you donate goes on to the projects on the ground, and it gets used to impact the people that they are actually working to support. And so it flips it a little bit, because if you donate to mainstream charities, often up to 90% of what you donate actually goes to running the charity and not to the things that they say that they're supporting. Now, obviously, all money is good when it goes into on the ground stuff, but if we can flip it so that 100% goes in, that's incredibly important. And yeah, as I mentioned before, feeding people, clean drinking water, sex trafficking, and climate change are the 4 main focus areas. But we try and do everything across the United States Sustainable Development Goals. So there's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And basically the UN, very smart people, have said we need to hit these targets. I think it's by 2030 or 2025, I forget exactly, for us to basically bring the developing world up with us. And so, anything that's kind of under that umbrella fits into the philanthropy.
I love that so much. And it's got me thinking, right? We're both kind of heavily entrenched in this coaching world, this online coaching world. And there's been a backlash, we know, toward that in the last couple of years. A lot of that is this sense of, if I am going to be really visible, it's because I'm really self-centered, I'm selfish. I think, everyone needs to listen to what I have to say, or you'll hear the term guru thrown around in a derogatory way. Like, I think I'm a guru. And I think you and I both, not to speak for you, but I think look at that a different way. It's like, look, unless and until you have a certain amount of visibility, there's a limit to how much change you can affect and how much impact you can have. I know you coach your clients through this because I know people come to you scared to get on stage, or do they? I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, I have people that I've worked with that are terrified of being on stage in front of people, and I put them in front of thousands of people. I think, you're very heavily involved in politics, right? Like, I know that you've got that side of your business consulting as well. And if I think about anyone that goes into something where they're wanting to make a genuine impact on people's lives, they need to have a healthy ego on them. And I say healthy because there's certain things that are happening at the moment as we're recording this, where there are some egos that are maybe not so healthy. But I think that that's really, really important because you're right. In order to make the change, you've got to see yourself as something larger than life in many ways and present that out to the world because people buy certainty and they buy confidence. And so, for you to have the impact from a generating more income point of view, they need that certainty and confidence from you to trust that they can buy your stuff and that they'll get results. But also from a like, I'm going out to change the world. Okay, I can give you an example right now. I am designing something really insane. And one day, many, many years ago, I decided that, put it up on my Facebook, my business Facebook, one day I'm going to run one of my events through space. And it was like a ha moment. I wasn't really thinking of it. Then a week later, a client, Ryan, sends me this article, a hotel being built in space that can house 180 guests. And I was like, wow, okay, well, now it's not just a harebrained idea, it's a plan and I have to follow through. And so originally it was going to be like a business mastermind. That was my ego, right? That was me going, I'm going to do the first ever business mastermind in space. It's going to be awesome. Then after a while, I got to, you know what? Rich white dude goes to space. That story's been told by three people already. Two of them, most of the world loves to hate. And one of them, Richard Branson, is like everyone kind of likes him. But Elon and Jeff Bezos don't have the best reputation with half of the world. So I was like, you know what? There needs to be something more impactful and a little bit more, what's the word? Something that's going to bring humanity along with it. And so we're doing this now to raise money for charity. We're going to raise $10 billion and then give that to worthy causes, just give it away. But part of that is investing it in a humanity future fund that will generate about $500 million in growth on the principal every single year. And then that will be disseminated out. So here's my point though. For me to do that, I have to have an ego the size of Montana to go out and say to people, I'm actually doing this and have them believe me so much that investors will come and invest and those sorts of things. So I think it can be used for good. But I agree with you that some people sometimes in our space, and not to trash on anyone, but kind of trashing on people, is that the motivations are different. And there's nothing wrong with having different motivations for, just wanting to create money and wealth. But I'm much more aligned with the people like yourself who are genuinely in this because we want to have an impact on people's lives and the world while making stacks of cash, which is great.
Right. It's not an either or. And in fact, I think it's kind of necessary, right? I think and I've coached a lot of people through, especially coming from progressive politics, a lot of people through, oh, if I make money, it means I'm a bad person, right? Like only like all rich people are bad. Money means bad. Or if I make money, it means I'm leaving everybody behind from my community. I'm like, there's like a betrayal thing that'll come up. And it's interesting. We have to work through some of the trauma stuff sometimes and do some trauma release before we can get to the point of, oh, the logical point of, I can actually do a lot more good when there's a lot more money in the picture.
Yeah, and I think about that. So, like, let's get into some more woo-woo stuff here. Is that everyone has like an income threshold where the energetics of money kind of hits this ceiling, and for whatever reason, the trauma and all the stuff from their past kind of goes into all of that, and then they behave in a certain way as because of that, whether it's family dynamics or whether it's their own kind of things around money or whatever. But the way that I look at it is that money doesn't actually exist. And at the same time, everything that you've ever wanted all the cash that you've ever wanted actually already exists in the world. And it's yours to go out and make a declaration that this is what I'm going to go and get, to go out there and to go get it. Now, that declaration, anytime you speak something, I believe the universe shifts on its axis. And what I mean by that is that when we speak, there's a vibrational element that comes out of our mouths. That vibration, that sound wave, then keeps going. Let me ask you a question. So when something comes out of your mouth and there's little waves and everything, where does it end up?
Oh Lord, I feel like there's a right and a wrong answer to this question, but I'm aligned with you. I feel like especially the power of your energy, the power of your word is so important. And when you speak your word, it actually shifts. And this gets into quantum physics. We want to get real nerdy, right? But everything rearranges to your perception. So your reality rearranges to your perception when especially when you speak something out loud, what you experience is much more likely to be in line with what you spoke.
Absolutely. And in the quantum world, it's all already happened already, right? Like you said, something, it's already there. But in the physical world, when you speak, those sound waves, they hit the ceiling. And then we all know through like physics that like everything is vibration. So it'll hit the ceiling and it will vibrate through it, and then it will go through the cavity in your ceiling up to the roof and vibrate through it, and then it will go further than that into the space above, and then it will literally go to the ozone layer and then out into space. And literally with the power of your world, you are shifting the entire universe on its axis. And I got to tell you, the universe listens. Similar to what you were saying before, it does. I know for myself, every time I'm running a negative racket in my head and I'm saying words, I had a mentor recently say to me, he's like, are you listening to the words that you're saying? I don't want to know you right now. I don't want to do business with you right now. Like you're saying all this stuff that's just crap. And I know for myself, I feel a ton better when I'm speaking really positive things. Now that's hard because we're trained to think negatively by marketing. We're trained from a flight or flight response to look for danger everywhere. But I know that speaking and outwardly saying the things that you're up to in the world is far more likely outcome is that they will come true because of what you said before of, you know, these things lining up for you. Someone will come into your reticular activating system. You'll see someone or you'll realize something that wasn't there previously. And then the whole world can open up to you. Let me ask you a question. As an example for everyone listening, what's something that you never dreamed possible before, but when you spoke it, it became a reality?
Oh, I mean, going back to even like when I decided to go to business school, I never thought that I would go to an Ivy League school. Like I'm from the trailer. I'm from Oklahoma.
All right.
I can say I'm white trash and like identify with that, right? Because I'm not calling anybody else that. But that's, I came from this background and it wasn't something I thought was possible for me. And then I did campaigns, right? I started in politics. I did campaign, like literally just out there like knocking doors and canvassing and doing campaign work. And there was a guy that I was on a campaign with, and he applied to and got into Harvard Law School. And because I'm a kind of an arrogant dick, like I saw that and was like, well, if that guy can get into Harvard, nothing wrong with that. That guy's fine. Like I like that guy. If you're listening, I've lost touch with him. Hopefully he's not totally cool, normal guy. But I didn't think of him as like being way smarter than me or something like that. Right. So like when I saw him get into Harvard, I was like, oh, well, if he can do that, I can do that. And that's when I applied to and got into Dartmouth for business school. And I got there and I was just like, how the fuck did I like how did I get here? It was like one of those like, this is not my beautiful life. Like, how did I get here? Moments. And I felt really out of place and like, oh my God, I shouldn't be here. Like, I don't fit in with these people. Like, I slipped through the cracks.
And then let me guess that over time, though, you probably made a name for yourself and you actually did belong and you did fit in because of a declaration that you made that you were going to do it. That's good.
Absolutely, I did, and even became a leader in certain aspects of those spaces where I was somebody who came from I was insecure that I didn't come from like a hardcore mathematic or quantitative background, and I was in class with these people who had been on Wall Street and had been in like McKinsey and these big consulting firms, and I was like from politics, but I was a better writer than a lot of those people. I had, so it was like, oh, so then now I'm running the paper and I'm teaching people how to do public speaking. And I found a niche for myself and became a leader in that space and was really appreciated in that space. It's on my mind because I just got back from my 15-year reunion a couple of weeks ago. And it was it was like coming home, some of those people I haven't seen or talked to in that whole 15 years. And it's like no time passed at all. And it was just, we love each other. We love each other there. And just being there on campus, I felt like I was home. I felt like I was with people who love me and get me. And it's the most sense of belonging, whatever the highest belonging is what I felt there. And it's fascinating. And I could tell you 30 examples of that in my life where I went into somewhere with, an imposter syndrome or feeling like I was too different or I was too weird and was, eventually embraced and elevated for that.
Here's the thing for me as well. I just like one of the things that I now understand, but I don't always remember it. When I go into those sorts of environments, every single person's feeling the same. Like everyone's got the same imposter syndrome, feeling like they don't belong, et cetera, et cetera. We've all got our hang-ups, right? It's very, very interesting. I think that one of the things that we don't realize, and this is why I love events so much, is that just our presence has a positive impact on the world of other people. So in our events, I often talk about the fact that when you're in the room, energetically, remarkable things happen in any communication. We all have magnetic fields around us. Like a really good example of this is they've actually shown when you someone that's had like an amputation, they've actually shown through like all of these different readings and whatnot. Do you know how they get like phantom pain? They've actually shown through science that the arm still exists even though it's no longer there energetic. And so what that tells me, and I know this, when I'm in communication with someone, I'm in their presence, it's kind of like our energies and our bodies are conspiring together in the universe. So when you put lots of people in a room like that, there's something really remarkable that happens in terms of the energy of the room. Like ever since basically we turned from chimps into walking, talking humans, we've been getting together in events to connect, communicate, and to engage in commerce. And like we are actually a tribal species, and that's very, very important to our core in terms of like not only like from our brain, but in our heart as well. And so I think about the events that we put on is that I'm having a genuine impact on your life while you're at this event. But what happens internally to you then goes out into the wider world, and that energy gets transferred. And then that person speaks something positive and it goes into the world and the ether and all that sort of stuff. So it's just like, it's remarkable and it feels amazing to be able to be a part of that. Like it's a privilege. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, 1,000%.
So I'm curious for you, what's the most like wild, out of body woo experience that you've ever had and possibly can't even explain?
Okay, I gotta talk about my boyfriend and hope he's okay with that. Some of his
Okay.
I know some of his people listen to this, so hi, Brad's people listening to this.
Ask for forgiveness.
I
You're good.
Yeah, no, he's fine. He'll love it. Won't you, baby? So I went through a lot of really relationship turmoil without getting into it, right? Like, I've been divorced twice. I did like a whole stint as a polyamorous person for a long time. There's just a lot of me trying to figure out. In fact, for many years, I was convinced, and this is kind of what fed into polyamory for me. I was just convinced, well, there's no such thing as like one person that can meet all your needs or check all your boxes. So I'll, be a little bit over here, a little bit over here. Like it's my responsibility to meet my own needs. There was like some empowerment to that at the time for me. And I was trying to do that for a long time. And eventually I got to, okay, well, that's not it. And I did enough work that I was like, okay, I'm to the point where I believe that there is somebody for me. And I did in fact, my first NLP breakthrough session, and I'm supposed to say, Ken said, I need to say it's neuro-linguistic programming. That's what NLP stands for, neuro-linguistic programming. If you want to Google it, we do breakthrough sessions, which shift everything in a day. I don't know if you've had the chance to be a client in one of those, Brody. If not, I'll sell you on it later.
Right. You know what? I've never actually. So it's funny. Our entire industry is like everyone's like, you go to do NLP, you go to do NLP to, sorry, neuro linguistic programming to
Neuro-linguistic.
to be a coach. And like I'm a consultant, so it's a little bit different. But I've had experiences like timeline therapy and stuff like that, which is my crazy experience. I'll get into that after you.
Yeah. So, well, no, that's great. In an NLP breakthrough session, we do timeline therapy. That's part of it, part of the release. And so the very first one I did, and we do them in one of 6 major areas of your life. And so the very first one that I did was on romantic relationships. And I had my very good friend, Mo Poole, we'll shout out Mo, facilitated this for me. She's a brilliant coach, facilitated this for me. And I had some major relationship breakthroughs in that, in terms of boundaries coming in that I hadn't put in terms of like not needing to rescue or save other people. And, we call it basic bitch baggage, right? It's a basic bitch baggage around relationships.
That's great. I've never heard that
I
before,
cleared
but
it.
awesome.
Cleared it, read this book. I believe it's called Calling in the One. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. It just literally started. I read the first chapter, and the first chapter was like, oh, just go out and smile at people. Just go out and like connect with the people. And so I just started doing this. And I wrote down a list of, here are like everything that I want. Here's everything. This person's going to check every one of these boxes. Right. And I think my list ended up being 21 things. And then it was like, here's the 3 that I'm going to start that are absolutely non-negotiable things out of this 20. Because probably not going to get all 21, but if I can only get 3, here's the 3. And it's like kind, sense of humor. Right. But I had the 21 things. And so Fast forward a little bit, I end up going to this Hawaiian energy training called Huna in Hawaii, right? With my 16-year at the time, my son who's now in college was 16 at the time. And really just because I thought it would be a fun thing for the two of us to do, like a bond. He'd had a rough year, COVID was rough on him. Like the isolation of COVID was tough on him as a teen. I thought this will be a beautiful thing for us to do and kind of reset. And I honestly wanted him to be in a personal growth situation where he could kind of see, oh, like there's lots of ways to deal with, these tough feelings that you're dealing with and are coming up. And he's at that age where he's going to listen to other people more than me, right? So I bring him to Hawaii, and just in the course of this training, I meet this guy who's there. We're in level 1. He's like on level like 7. The situation. If it sounds culty, it's because it is. And he's on like level 7 of the situation.
You're not supposed to
And
tell them that until they're in.
he was, well, yeah, you can talk to me offline about that particular thing. But, but the point is, we were supposed to meet there, right? We were supposed to meet there. And we didn't, it wasn't like an instant, like we're going to get together thing. It was just that we were attracted to each other as friends. We found each other interesting. I was asking him questions. I sensed immediately that I was safe with him and I could ask questions like, hey, is this a cult? Like the questions I didn't feel safe asking other people. And he liked that I was the kind of person that would ask those questions, and we were like intellectually attracted to each other. And we ended up talking as friends for several months. And like, long story short, we live 4 hours apart. Long story short, after about 3 months, we decided maybe we should get together and go on a date, and kind of the rest is history. But I realized that he checks every single one of those boxes, plus boxes that I didn't even know. He meets needs that I didn't even know I had, if that makes sense. And it's just one of those bizarre things, because it's like, what was I doing in Hawaii? What was he doing in Hawaii? At that exact same time, the fact that we happen to live in like short driving distance from one another, the fact that we happen to both be single at the right time, like when we're both very, sexy people who aren't often single, like, it's like, it was so much that. And when I started talking to him romantically, I just had this, at first it was a little question, like, what if this was the one? And then it just became louder and louder and louder. And like every time I've tried to fight it, because like I've got avoidant stuff, just like the basic bitch baggage, just like the rest of us. Every time I've tried to fight, I've just gotten such a strong, this is it. Just like stick with this. And so, yeah, it's just an insane example. And I've heard so many other people, Brody, tell stories of like meeting their person and like how when and like, I just thought that was just Hollywood movie bullshit.
Yeah. But then it happened. And then so you were like, crap, I've actually, yeah.
Well, the fact that we had to be halfway across the world is just like, oh my God, like there's no way this wasn't somehow like predetermined or pre-designed.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny you mentioned the one. So one of my best business friends, Alex, he says that you should treat every single person that you date like they are the one, because they just might be. Just kind of reminded that.
Totally.
Yeah. Interesting. Really interesting. Thanks for sharing. So I have to just sidebar from my story about my most woo-woo thing. You mentioned relationships. I went into Chat GPT last night and I was like, because everyone's doing these things like, tell me what you know about me from all of our conversations. So I was like, based on all of our conversations, what should I be looking for in a man? And it gave me the most perfect response of everything that I want. It said line by line, it was a whole paragraph. And it was freaky. I'm like, have I really used ChatGPT that much that it's able to to spurt this stuff back to me? And it was amazing. So I was smart. I put it out to the ether. I put it up on my stories on my private Instagram. And I was like, please make yourself known if you fit this criteria. And a few people put their hand up. So great call for action. And so we'll see what happens there. So, so my
Amazing.
woo experience. You actually know this person, Kylie Ryan. We did some work together. So we did a bit of timeline therapy and we traced back. We did this whole thing. Actually, I don't know if this is timeline therapy because I haven't done the training. But anyway, we went back 500 lifetimes ago. And like we went way, way, way back. And I was like in a trance. I can't explain how this happened. It just did. And we discovered that in that lifetime, I was some intergalactic explorer trying to save the universe. And I know that this is real because of my absolute affinity now with space. Like I am at my happiest when I'm at altitude on a plane. So much so now that I'm actually going to space with this space event that we're putting on. And what happened in this experience is that I verbalized that I failed in my mission to save the universe. And then the Big Bang happened and destroyed everything / birthed everything new. And I'm here in this lifetime to make amends for that. That's kind of what we got to. And that in this lifetime, it's the completion of that journey. And so not intentionally, but this space thing is kind of it. This idea that we're going and I'm going to raise all this money and it's going to live on in perpetuity with 500 million every year. That's me fulfilling the mission. And I just realized in this conversation right now, that the space event is the fulfillment of that. I knew that this lifetime was where it would happen, but I've just made the connection live on this call. And here's the next level of this. The reason I was able to be in the space of this and to be open to such a thing is that on May 23, 2017, I woke up from a massive drug overdose that should have killed me. It was an accidental overdose. And at a time in my life when I was in therapy and I was exploring some really, really dark stuff around some memories that were resurfacing, they were violent, they were disconnected, they weren't complete. I didn't trust them. I didn't trust myself. It was insane. And so my drinking increased, my drugging increased. I relapsed on meth, which was my drug of choice in my early 20s. And I woke up from this overdose. And it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. By the grace of the universe, I'm still alive. When I woke up from that overdose, with my mum, my dad, a paramedic, police officer, and my housemate all looking down at me. And there was this question that came into my mind, like, Brody, is this really how you want to live your life? And the answer that came out of my mouth was, fuck no. And they thought I was talking about them, but it was this question that had kind of been answered. Anyway, long story short, went to rehab, did all the things. They diagnosed me with a billion things. And I was like, nah, that's not going to be my story. There's got to be more to life than you have complex PTSD. That ends up, you end up jailed, you end up institutionalized or dead with those sorts of diagnoses. And two of those I'd already checked off. I didn't want to then go to jail. I was on the whisker away from death and I was in an institution at the time. And so find myself at a personal development event. This is what really set me up for everything else that I'm kind of working on now, is that Tony Robbins does this Dickens process of day 3 of the Unleash the Power Within event, where you get complete with your trauma. You trace back to it, you trace forward with the pain and all this kind of stuff. At the end of this, I collapsed my trauma and my experience of the abuse. It was something that just kind of, I got to a place of acceptance with it, because by that point, I still didn't quite believe the memories because they weren't complete. Even though my therapist was like, you were textbook. The moment you walked in from session 1, I knew that this happened to you. And so I'm at this event bawling my eyes out because I'm complete with it. There's music going on. It was happy tears. It was like relief tears. It was everything. And I made this split second decision where I was like, you know what? If you're going to live, like truly live now, you need to forgive your abuser. And so I did this thing again, another thing where, I always say I'm not particularly woo-woo, but I really am. But at the time I was guided by, I don't know, just something. And I put out this energy in the world and I said to this teacher, this guy, when I was 6 years old, I could call him a guy, he was a monster. But basically what I put out to the universe, I said, look, I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're doing right now, but to do that to a little boy, you must have been in a serious amount of pain. So for that, I forgive you. And what happened next, I can seriously, the only way I can describe it is as it's biblical. And I'm not, I'm not religious in any sense, but so I forgave him. And then this whoosh of energy came over me, like literally just went from top to bottom. And I cannot describe it. I have no reference point for it other than what happened in the next breath probably set me up for the rest of my life, because I forgave him. And in the next breath, I forgave myself. And the weight that I had been carrying since I was 6 years old and all of the things that I was doing just to survive because of that threat of a teacher / then authority figures just disappeared, just gone. And then like this all happened in mind moments and breaths, right? In Buddhist teaching, we talk about mind moments. This is how fast it was. And then I experienced what I can only describe as pure unadulterated joy. And it was actually the first time I'd experienced joy like in its purest form since I was 6 years old when the abuse happened. And it was wonderful. It was like ecstasy. And I'd done the drug ecstasy a lot before. So like this was, but
It was literally
what I realized, I was like, well, you know what? If I can get access to this without drugs or alcohol or anything in my system, I don't want to put another mind altering substance in my body ever again. And I have not since. And it's been 7.5 years just last week. And I was just like, you know what? I want every day to feel like this. And the next breath was, hang on, no. I want everyone to feel like this. The decision to make my life about impact from there was formed. And so I believe through all of this, nothing is accidental. Everything is by design. And that abuse at 6 years old set me up to be the phenomenon of a human being that I am, that's literally causing ripples throughout the world. I'm not always perfect. I get things wrong like everyone, but it's all part of the design. So that's it. That's my woo.
I love it. I love it. You and I share this that I think everything is by design too. I do believe in free will. I do believe you can step off the path and say no, give somebody else that job. I don't want it, or step away from a calling if you want to. But I do think that we all have a calling, and I do think we all have a path. And I know it can be upsetting or triggering or traumatizing for people to hear sometimes. Oh, whatever happened to you for a reason. Like, not everybody's ready to think about that or deal with that, and it's okay. Like, if that's an upsetting thought to you, that's a great flag of something for you to explore, right? We're not saying like, oh, you deserve this when we say this. We're saying like, for me, like everything traumatic that happened in my past, it made me a more empathetic person. It gave me a depth of understanding, right? And sometimes I have this representation in my mind of like a pinball machine, and it's like sometimes life is pinging me around like a pinball, and it feels like that sometimes, right? But like I get to where I'm supposed to go because sometimes the paddle goes, nope, go over here, right? And that's not always a pleasant experience. In fact, it's usually not a pleasant experience.
And just to kind of do a bit of a disclaimer for everyone listening, when I share about this in my keynote speeches, I always say that now I don't advocate for everyone to forgive their abuser. Like that's a lot. And I'm not asking anyone to do that. I'm just sharing my personal experience. For a lot of people, that's just so far beyond what they're even willing to comprehend. But I think that one of the things that I've kind of said a lot is that in that forgiveness, I found a future. And I think the part it wasn't necessarily about forgiving him, it was forgiving myself. Because for all of those years, I had bottled this stuff up. I was running, I was a child, a scared little 6-year-old boy was like at the wheel of my life, running everything. And yeah, it's really remarkable that these sorts of things happen. This is why even though I say I'm not woo woo, I'm very, very, very in tune with the universe. And there is something like I am, but I just like it explained by science. And how I rationalize it is that there is so much that we don't know. There's so much that we don't even know that we don't know. I don't know what's happening cosmically at the moment, but I'm at something's happening. And there's a cosmic shitstorm out there at the moment because I am all over the place. Like my anxiety is through the roof. I'm disconnected. There's something happening, but it's great because you ride the wave of it and it teaches you so much about yourself, to slow down, to be at peace. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun when you tap into it. It's true.
Well, TikTok tells me that if you're a cardinal sign, there's some kind of eclipse that's affecting you right now. I don't know what you are.
I'm a Gemini, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't know. I'm not an astrology person. TikTok will tell you exactly what's going on. It was such an empowering concept for me that just came through in the last couple of months. I was reading this book, Journey of Souls. And you want to talk about woo-woo. Journey of Souls is about, it's written by a hypnotherapist who spent 30 years doing like regression hypnotherapy on people who had near-death experiences and then come back. But he was regressing them to the point where they were like on the other side. And so like, yeah. And then he writes this whole book about, and it's like 30 years of amalgamative qualitative data from these people, dozens and dozens of patients that have been regressed to the point where they're on the other side, and all the things they said in common about like, here's what we're like as souls and before we decide to come down. Yeah, fascinating if you haven't read it. One of the things they talk about is just the discomfort of the human experience and how sometimes the souls are like, oh my God, do I have to go right now? Because like I'm chilling. I don't really feel like going back right now. I'm not ready. Like, do I have to? And I'm paraphrasing, obviously. It's written much more eloquently than that. But what popped for me when I was reading this was like, yeah, all the things that we're afraid of, anything I can think of that I would possibly be afraid of happening in my life, it really boils down to that would be really uncomfortable for me, right? Whether it's like, okay, if you burned me at the stake, like I'm just trying to think of like what are the things that are like the scariest things I could think of. That would be highly physically uncomfortable. If something happened to one of my kids, it would be highly psychologically uncomfortable. It'd be horrible. Right. But it all comes down to like just being really, really, really uncomfortable. And if you think about it like that, it can actually pop into a very liberating thought, like, oh God, worst case scenario, I'm just really, really uncomfortable.
Or you're dead. Like, and then you won't even feel it.
Or you're dead. So it's like I'm really uncomfortable or I'm dead. And part of life is being uncomfortable. And then I'll be dead and I'll be comfortable again. And whether you believe in Journey of Souls or whether you believe you're just like dead and everything stops, like it's not uncomfortable, right? Either way. So that for me was like, oh,
yeah. I've got
people. Yeah, you got
No, no, no.
odds. Go ahead.
You said people and then
Well, it's like people do so much to avoid discomfort. They end up in more discomfort. We know that, right? Like in the personal development world, we're like, oh my God, everything you're trying to do to avoid discomfort. Like, I don't want to go to the gym right now. You end up like more uncomfortable down the line because now I can't climb a flight of stairs without huffing and puffing, for example.
I've never regretted going to the gym. I've only regretted not.
So we talk a lot about like temporary discomfort for long-term comfort. But really, like at the core of that, the crux of that is there's no way to avoid discomfort. And so that's where some people will be like, oh, choose your hard. Do you want to like gym hard or puffing up the stairs hard? Right. Like it can get a little bit trite. But that thought that like at the end of the day, worst case scenario, no matter what happens to me, it's just gonna be uncomfortable. Like that's what I'm worried about. Like that released so much anxiety for me, Brody. I was like, I got such a sense of peace.
I've got something to add to this that a lot of people, when they hear this, their minds kind of explode and it's not great for them, but I find it very liberating. So you think about what's happened in the universe, the Big Bang happened, and we are literally a product of cosmic dust. Like that's literally what's happened. There was an explosion and we've formed out of that. And so, like everything here, tactile is all dust. It's atoms, but it's come from dust, so et cetera, et cetera. So when I think about, we're learning more and more about the sheer size of the universe. And it is beyond imagination how fucking big the universe is. Like whatever you think it is right now, times it by like a trillion, and that's how big the universe is, right? And so when I think about problems, and I don't like, I'm not perfect with this. I have anxieties, I feel uncomfortable, all of those sorts of things. But we are literally of 8 billion people. We are on this little speck of dust rotating, like going around, rotating around this big ball of fiery gas in this infinite expanse of a universe. And we have the nerve to think that our problems actually matter in the grand scheme of things. And so for me, a lot of people see that as really existential, like, oh my God, like that's like so pessimistic. And I go, no, it's really liberating because what it means is that everything is temporary. Like nothing is forever, even life, all that sort of stuff. So two things on this. The Buddha teaches something, he teaches about impermanence and suffering. And when I grew up, my mother always used to say, life is suffering, life is suffering, life is suffering. And I used to hate it because I thought that like my experience of life, I'm not always suffering. I experience joy or whatever. And so eventually I went to the text because I was really pissed off with her saying that. And what I discovered was something a little bit different and a little bit more nuanced. So that was her interpretation of it. My interpretation of it is that what he was saying is that, suffering exists. And here's when it exists. So when we experience an emotion like joy, we long for the joy to stay. Like we really want it to stay and we want it to continue on. It's why people get addicted to drugs and what they want that feeling to stay. So I was addicted, etc. And then when you experience sadness, you long for the sadness to go. You don't want to feel it anymore. The uncomfortability, you don't want to feel it. What he said was that in the longing is where the actual suffering exists. Because if you can stop and you can appreciate the sadness and experience it and all of its emotional turmoil, there can actually be richness in the sadness. And when I got that, I was like, wow, okay. So now I have an opportunity to treat every experience as serving and having an opportunity to listen when something is happening to what's truly going on rather than desperately trying to get out of it, which I was doing for 15 years when I was on drugs. And so I find that very liberating. It's this beautiful thing. So yeah, this is a great conversation. I haven't gone this deep with someone. Wow. So this is fun.
Oh, we love it. And I'm just over here like, preach, man, take us to church. No
Take us
wonder
to
you're
the
so
Buddha.
great on stage. I get it. I see it.
Mm.
I see it. It's this sense of non-attachment, right? Like when you start to explain that, that's a Buddhist idea, yeah. This I'm asking you because I'm not a Buddhist and you
No,
were
it is. It
raised.
is. So what he talks about is that everything is like there's just all mind moments from one to the next. And there was speaking of like impermanence and whatnot, I was at an event recently with a good friend and mentor of mine and business partner, Taylor Welch. And it was this thing called the theater of the mind. And he's really good. He's got this IP called belief architecture, and it's probably the best mindset training I've ever done. But what he was talking about in this training is that the future is the present that just hasn't happened yet. And every time we're in the present, right, we are just imprinting the future into a memory. because it happens, it disappears like that. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, that just kind of like changes everything for me, because it means that nothing right now, well, nothing in the future has happened yet. So there goes my anxiety, right? Gone.
It's not real.
No, it's not real. But then this present moment, and you're talking about impermanence, is that it goes like that, then it's in the past. And so, why would we worry about something that hasn't happened yet? Because it's eventually going to come to pass. We know that. And also, there's some beauty in this thought process and this idea of, well, why don't I call forward a future that I want to be a memory, as opposed to be calling forward a future that I don't want to happen, which is where we spend most of our time, right? So I found that really like, yes, okay, cool, I've got this. But it requires discipline to experience the impermanent, as the Buddha kind of teachers. That's why the Buddhists, like I'm sorry, monks, become these ascetics. They just wander, and they don't have worldly possessions and whatnot, because they don't want to be attached to things. They just want to be experiencing life at this moment. And when they achieve enlightenment, that's kind of the culmination of when they reach that nirvanic peace within, or nirvana as they call it. It's the culmination where they expand beyond the realms, actually. So in Buddhist, there's 39 different realms in existence simultaneously. And so they're all at once, they're all around us. And there are different beings in the different realms that it's kind of woo and crazy, but I want to explore that. I want to be in another realm at some point. And so when you get reincarnated, you can end up in another realm, as per the teachings.
Oh my gosh. Okay. No, I didn't know about the 39 realms, and this makes me want to dive into learning all about that. So thank you, Brody. You have
What the Buddha taught.
opened up a whole new level of nerd for me. And now I got to go read about that. Like, I had time for that. But
Yeah. Well, you do have time. You do have time, because the future is the past. It just hasn't happened yet. And I have this concept. I want to just expand this a little bit further. I'm developing some IP at the moment. And I don't prescribe to the notion that we're just going to live for 100 years. I find that very defeatist. I think that it's very limiting, and it ignores a reality that may not be true. Now, medicals, we've made a decision medically that can happen. So the IP that I'm developing is called the Million-Year Life. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a 10-year vision?
yes,
Right. Do you have a 100-year vision?
kind of.
Kind of. Do you have a 1,000-year vision?
Do not.
Do you have a 1 million-year vision?
Certainly not.
Yeah, okay. No one does, right? Except me now. And once I got this, I heard this from someone. I heard like this cool line of questioning, and I'm like, what if we could have a 1 million-year life? What if we could actually bring that into existence, by sheer pure will right now? Because no one's ever really thought of that before. No one's ever really brought it or spoken it into existence. And then when you start doing that, the universe lines up, etc. Now, do I actually want to live for 1 million years? Not necessarily. Well, I don't know, maybe. But I'm going to design my life in such a way that it's possible that it happens. And I don't know, maybe this $10 billion that I raise puts me living on forever, in a sense that it's my legacy, and that's the 1 million-year life. But I think when you expand your vision beyond what is currently in the box of you're going to live to 100, beautiful, beautiful things happen. And I reckon I would hedge a bet that you will accomplish more in your life that you do live, and that does maybe end, right? If you expand to that 1 million-year vision, as opposed to I've just got a 10-year vision. Now be careful as well, because the mind will go straight to how am I going to do this? It'll give you all the reasons, thoughts, and considerations why you can't. But you can actually train your mind to go out of cyclical looping, where it's in this like horrible kind of infinite loop of negativity, to become like a slingshot, where instead of being triggered by things, you cause the trigger to achieve things. So that's what I'm exploring at the moment, and I'm going to make it happen, and it's going to be a whole thing. I'm going to inspire a movement, and it'll be great.
This is so cool. It's so beautiful. I always love talking to you because you're so inspirational, and you always get me thinking bigger, which, there's not very many people in my life that do that for me. So thank you, Brody. You always get me thinking bigger. Where can folks find you if they want to learn more about you and your work on the internet?
Yes. It's Brody Lee on all socials. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, etc. About to do an upgrade. So depending on when you listen to this, you might want to check out Brody Lee Live. It's not live yet, but we're switching things over. I don't need to get into the reasons why. And brodylee.com is probably the best place from a business point of view, if you want to talk about events and all that sort of stuff. And you'll find me on stages all over the United States over the next 12 months. We're creating a 1,000 person event next year. And we're going to start, you'll probably find me in the next couple of years, you'll find me on TV and all that sort of stuff as we start to build out this project, Aurelis. Fun fact, just very quickly. So the name Project Aurelis is the name for our space event. And we'll list a project that's going into building it. And I wanted to do something that references humanity on the ground, but also our relationship with the sky. And so the Greek god of the sky is Aurelis, or Uranus, as we know, as him as. I didn't think that would be a great name, but the Roman god of the sky is Caelus. So I put them together and made it Aurelis, and there's nothing else like that. So I just wanted to end them.
Beautiful. It's so cool. Go find Brody. Go look him up. You may, spoiler alert, you may see us on a stage together at some points in the next year or so. We're gonna keep this stuff popping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, and everybody else, we'll talk to you soon.